Join us as Mike and Brook Reilly dive into why so many artists struggle financially. We'll explore how passion alone isn't enough, the advantage of financial support, and why understanding money is key to making a creative career sustainable. Plus, we'll break down why treating art like a business is the key to long-term success. All this and more on the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly, and with me is Brook, controller of the company. And it is a cold day in Cleveland. I had the good fortune of getting down to Delray Beach. I'm still got my tan, still holding on to that, and being prepared for the upcoming weather next week of snow and more cold. So on that note, let's talk about, why do artists starve? Why do you think artists starve, Brook? That starving artist cliche.
I think it's because their thing they're passionate about isn't making them any money. I mean, like, that's just kind of what it comes down to. I think if you're an artist, like, unless you've already got something up and running and you're, whether you're like making t-shirts and if that's your passion, and great, if you're fulfilling orders and making payroll and all that stuff, that's great. But I almost think that if you're an artist or you're someone who likes to do things creatively, doing that on the side is a better option, and then having a full-time job to like supplement, like paying your bills and having food in the fridge is a smarter approach. Unless you're some trust fund kid who's got mom and dad flipping everything and you're, a painter, then great, but
my son, the painter. My daughter, the artist.
Or that guy in, was it Billions, where Axe basically hires that painter and he just, right?
Yeah. And I think his therapist, what was her name? Wendy?
Oh yeah, she falls for him.
Yeah. And he's just a gigolo. Yeah. I think, hey, folks, this is connected to your small business, your real estate portfolio. I just got done. I highly recommend people read two of my favorite online magazines. One is the New York magazine, not the New Yorker, but New York magazine. There's no "the" there. So New York magazine, and then the Daily Beast, which is a real nice kind of, a little gossipy, but it's got so many really interesting stories. Nothing super in depth like the New Yorker, but New York Magazine had a fascinating issue about how a lot of the people who live in New York are being funded by their parents or trust funds or grandparents. Was always a dirty little secret in private school. When my kids were going to private school, half those kids, if not more, I think it was 60%, somebody told me, in the admin department, parents aren't paying for that. Grandparents are paying for it. And now I've got, hey, I'm 71 years old, and I've got, friends, I'm not going to name any names, people that are older, and all they're talking about is what they're doing for their kids and their grandkids. They're giving them money here, they're giving money there, et cetera, because they don't want their kids to have to be saddled with thinking about how to pay their bills. Because there's something kind of, dirty about it, or they should be at a higher plane. They should be, writing that novel, or having that bread store, or having that yoga studio, or having that art gallery. And I think there's something kind of icky about just talking about the nuts and bolts of how to pay your bills, how to handle money, how to be financially literate. Look, if you're going into real estate, I don't know how many people I've talked to getting into real estate. You know what? They're talking about getting 6 homes in Cleveland. I'm going in there big. This is my first of many properties I'm going to pick up. what is the point of having 6, 7 properties if you're barely making any money? How about having one property that makes as much of the 6 combined? Has anybody thought about that? No, there's this glamour about being a land baron, even though most of it is being financed by the banks or by your parents or by your wife's trust fund. You're not doing it. You're just playing Monopoly with other people's money. And I think with artists, there's nothing wrong about being an artist. My youngest son is a great artist, but he also needs to know how to make money, handle money. I mean, if you're a good artist, you should be like starting any business. Any business you start, be prepared to work 7 days a week. That's what it is. It's 7 days. I mean, if you're an athlete, you're a pro athlete, you're a LeBron, a Tom Brady. I mean, you are working out every day with a trainer. That's how these guys play in the 40s. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. It happens by hard work, relentless, persistent work. And part of the work is being a professional and knowing what to charge. So you're not just some kid playing at a hobby, which I think personally is a joke. So if you want to be an artist, maybe you might have a couple of side hustles. DoorDash driver, babysitter, do some, help clean out a house here, a couple hundred here, couple hundred here. But bottom line is you need to know how to manage money, meaning I'm not living off my credit card. Okay, I'm making $4,000 a month and I'm going to live on $4,000 a month. Okay, let's break it down. How much is your rent? How about getting a roommate? How about getting a duplex where you sublet the first floor? You've got to know the nuts and bolts about how to make money. And then whatever you want to do, you want to be an artist? Do you want to have that yoga studio? You want to have this? Fine, do whatever you want to do, but go into it as a professional, knowing how to support yourself. Maybe you're an artist. Ooh, that sounds great. I'm an artist, right? But your side hustle is, I'm a garbage man. Just tell people you're an artist. Garbage man, you make a lot of money. Okay? So, Edward R. Murrow, for those old enough or those who read history, he had See It Now. Look it up on Wikipedia. CBS, See It Now. That was like the early version of 60 Minutes. Very controversial. But he also had another show called Person to Person, where he'd interview Marilyn Monroe. And, Person to Person gave him the luxury of doing groundbreaking journalism, which is what See It Now was. Okay? So, you've got a property business, you've got a yoga studio, you've got this. Okay, fine. You got to know what is your nut to cover. What are your bills to cover, and how am I going to cover that nut? Thoughts, Brook?
Yeah, you have to have a way, a job to make money to support your passion. And I just think that, the other flip side too is like you could have a passion now, but once it becomes a job, you might turn out to hate that passion.
Yeah, I love going out to a restaurant. I wouldn't want to own a restaurant.
Yeah.
Unless I had money to burn.
Yeah. Or it's like, I have friends who before they loved to work out and lift weights, and then they became a personal trainer, and now they just they hate working out.
Yeah.
So it's, I know that you said that parents and grandparents, in New York, not just in New York, but everywhere, are subsidizing their kids and their grandkids. I think another thing too is it could be like someone's spouse using their income, and while the other one stays at home to be a writer or be a painter.
Right.
So
as long as they're committed to it and serious,
yeah, just be
as opposed to a
prepared
dilettante. Yeah.
and I think if you're really passionate about it, you'll do whatever it takes to make sure that you're making money so you can pay your rent and keep your electricity on.
Yeah, I believe when you're raising kids, I'm not interested in this bullshit. What's your passion? I don't want to hear that. Right now, teaching them the 4-letter word, work, is very important. Not fun, but they need to have that foundation, knowing how to work. I mean, that's where you learn a little bit of the street. This is not supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to, hey, get in line, right? You got to make your bed. You got to do this. But you know what happens when you teach kids how to work, as opposed to teaching them how to draw, teaching them how to do this? When they get older, they're not the kind of people that are going to sit on around a couch. They're doing the dishes. They're cleaning up the house because they're used to that. You have trained them to do that when they were growing up. And it's like brushing your teeth. When you brush your teeth every morning and then say you leave the house, you move out of the house, maybe going to college, maybe you're going on a trip, you got some roommates, you're living in there. What, are you going to stop brushing your teeth? No, you're used to that. You're used to working. So the most important thing to teach kids is to disabuse them of the notion that everything should be their passion or fun. There has to be the understanding that you have to work at it and you have to learn from your mistakes and you have to improve. New parent Brooke, your thoughts? Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested.
Well, I think one thing that struck me was I listened to this one podcast, and he's an ex Navy SEAL commander. He's a motivational speaker now. I just really like his stuff. Some people find him a little too intense, but he said something to me when I was on a run or something, and it always kind of like, I always remember when like shit hits the fan, or, I'm too tired or sore to do what I'm supposed to do. He always says, don't rely on motivation to get you through it. Rely on the discipline, because the discipline will kick in when you don't want to do the shit you don't want to do. It's hard to motivate anyone when you're like, well, I'll do the dishes, the next day.
That's called rationalization.
So,
yeah.
Plus, too, there's something really comforting, like having a newborn at home. Like, my son doesn't give a shit how tired. He's like, so there's something kind of satisfying about, like, it doesn't matter how tired or sore or cranky or hungry I am now. My priority right now is to feed him and change him, So it's like, it's just been kind of nice. And in this weird way, it's like, I always have a choice. Like, I could be, a terrible father and just have him cry all night, but I'm
Yeah, but you weren't raised that way.
I'm not going to do that. So there's something kind of nice about being like, just suck it up. You got to do it.
You know, it's interesting, Brooke, talking, I know we're kind of straying off into another sociological topic, but I could always tell when I was coaching baseball who had.
Oh, I bet and guess. What
do you think I want to say?
Which kids were raised by single moms? Which kids didn't have a dad?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to stereotype this because Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, they didn't have any dads. They had a single mom. But actually Clinton's was more his grandparents. And same thing with Obama, ironically enough. They had grandparents who raised them. And that was like their mom and dad. There was much more than a grandparent. But I just saw this TikTok video at lunch, and this little kid was going to, he was like 2 years old. He was going to the electric socket, trying to plug something in.
Yeah.
And the mom said, "Oh, honey, don't do that. Don't." And the dad said, No, let him do it. And the picture was on the dad. All of a sudden, you heard this, and all the lights flickered. and then the dad looked at his, his son or whatever, daughter. He looked at, "Hey, I don't think you're going to do that again, are you?"
Yeah, that's what I would do.
But see, that's the yin and yang. That's the yin and yang. Sometimes dad can be a little bit, too, Marine Corps. But on the other hand, you need that salt and pepper, That's what it is. And, that whole, hey, I don't, when you tell a kid, I don't care if you're not happy. Okay. That is irrelevant. All right. Hey, there's the dishwasher. Do it. Okay. I mean, it's kind of stone cold, but at the end of the day, when you're a little kid, one of my favorite stories with my dad, Marine Corps officer, was, I think it was 10 years old. And you guys have heard this story. But I remember saying, "Hey, Dad, how come you're not doing any work?" He's just supervising, clean out the garage, do this, got the chore list. And he looked at me and he said, "Because I'm paying the mortgage. When you pay the mortgage, you can tell your kids what to do." And I've never forgot that. I was like 9 or 10, and it made perfect sense. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're right. I'm just a kid.
Wow.
Kids get it, And the irony of it is, kids love to help. They love to be a player.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies on teaching them young, giving them little chores, because it helps build character.
Right.
They want to be helpful. And so, yeah, no, I'm, my wife and I, we talk a lot about, how we want to raise our son. And, he's at the age now where, we're not there yet. Yeah. So it could change. But I know one thing that we definitely agree on is, like my wife, I mean, she always had a part-time job.
Yeah.
At high school.
Absolutely.
She was, a hostess at a restaurant. She was this. Her brothers did the same thing. So
yeah, everybody had a side hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah. That lemonade stand. I know we've talked about this in the past, but I want to make sure we tie it back to why artists starve. Artists starve because they've never been taught or expected to support themselves. It's like taking a canary out of a canary's been raised in the cage, right? You send that canary out, I don't know, suburban forest. That canary's going to last, half day before it gets eaten? Because they don't have any survival skills. And part-time jobs, jobs at home, expected to kick in, expected to do this, X, Y, and Z, and then supplemented with financial literacy. It's all well and good to have a part-time job, but a part-time job where you're observing, You're observing how that restaurant's working. You're asking questions. It's not just magically going to a part-time job and then through osmosis, you're getting this stuff. No, talk to the owner and ask him, hey, how'd you start this business? What are some things that drive you crazy? Trust me, they will love to tell you that. End of a long day, I'm having a drink. Maybe you're not drinking, but, you ask some questions. How did you get this started? Learn. Take the opportunity to acquire knowledge in these part-time jobs. When, some of these lifeguards at Cleveland Skating Club where I swim, laps, I keep telling these guys, you have the opportunity to engage with people that are running companies. Okay? They would love to talk to you. Hey, I'm thinking to go, what was your college like? While they're toweling off or something. Yeah, they'll shoot the shit with you for 5 or 10 minutes. In fact, there's a great little scene in that movie Sabrina, the remake in the 90s, when the chauffeur, Sabrina's dad, the English dad, at the end of the movie, his girlfriend, I think she also walks out. Well, it turns out he's worth $1 million. She says, you never told me that. Well, and he says, well, I wasn't married to you. But I'm worth, I've got $1 million in the bank. How'd you get that? Well, I'm driving to work every day as the chauffeur. I'm listening to what my boss is buying and selling. And as soon as I get to drop him off, I go to my broker and I do the same. So he's mirroring the portfolio right there. So to wrap up my final thoughts, I'll flip it to Brook. Artists starve because they don't want to, they are not taught, they are not expected to be able to support themselves. They're literally not taught that. They're not raised to do it. They are in their ivory tower being an artist. Okay? And as long as mom and dad or grandpa or the trust is there, they won't starve. But anybody else trying to mimic that, who's following that pathway, who doesn't have that family money to lean on, you're going to starve, my man, if you don't. Or if you want to go out and get into real estate and you just think it's, paved in gold, or open up that little restaurant and you've never bothered to talk to other chefs, you're going to fail. You will fail. You will starve. Final thoughts, Brook?
Yeah, I think artists starve because they don't know how to manage and make money. And I think it just comes down to that.
That's how restaurants fail too.
Yeah.
Because an artist can be a chef.
Yeah. Unless you've got a wife, a husband, a partner, a parent who's subsidizing it, then unless this is a side job or a little side hustle, I guess you are going to starve.
Yeah, you are going to starve.
Unless this passion is that passionate, then...
Hey, and you know what? They're not going to be fat, right? Because they're starving. That's one thing they don't have to worry about, right?
Calorie deficit.
Why? We should change this title from not to why are artists starving? Why aren't artists fat? That's another one of my dad's great sayings. He had there was a lot of good, some bad, not so good, but not horrible. He was not abusive or anything. But he said to me, Mike, you're never going to see a fat mailman. Right? 20,000 steps minimum. We'll end on that note. Right. No fat artists out there. Thanks, Amari. Get those ads up now.
Yep. Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Reilly. Please add our show or follow us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Leave a like or comment on the video. All engagement is appreciated. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well for video content coming soon. For any Cleveland listeners or Cleveland Browns fans, you can check out our other podcast, Cleveland Browns Anonymous, for our weekly group therapy session. This is also on all the same platforms as the Cleveland Real Estate Investor.